Hello, for those of you who are interested, here's just a quick tutorial on how I create mood boards, also called inspiration boards. This is for INT 175 custom design. So I did select exploration for my historical study, and I went to the Ivory Coast of Africa for inspiration. And so how I approach mood boards is as follows. I first start by placing my inspiration photo in the upper left-hand corner and a second inspiration photo in the lower right-hand corner. The two photos should work together and they should clearly reflect some architecture, furniture, and direction you want to go with your project. Next, I go in and I start bringing in inspiration of furniture, materials, fabrics, lighting, all kinds of things that I think would work well with my concept. And I go ahead and I put those all on the board. And what you're going to notice is as I'm putting things on the board, I always find that at least one or two directions that I can take the project surfaces. In this example, I'm pulling actual African masks, actual African furnishings like the Sinufo stool, but then I'm noticing that I'm also bringing in some contemporary pieces. So contemporary pieces of furniture such as this that might be inspired by African furnishings, but not exactly the same. So I go ahead and I don't think too much about it, but I just bring in as many things that I think would work together as possible. Next, I make a duplicate of this slide. To make a duplicate of the slide, you do new slide and you duplicate the slide. And so what happens is you get your original and you get your duplicate. From there, I start organizing my objects that I brought in. So like I said, I have two different directions going. One a little more truer, authentic African design, and another one that is going to go a bit more contemporary. I can also mix the two, but I start kind of exploring what's surfacing and what looks good together. So start moving things around and you can start seeing what pieces look good with what. And so that's what I do. I go ahead and move those around and start placing things that I think look nice together. So I put those in groupings. At some point you have to decide which direction you're going to go, but sometimes what I do is I start by making one board and then a second board, and from there you can decide where you want to go. So here you can see in this example, I wanted to go a little more with the African masks, a little more regional, and so I'm exploring that. It's not what I chose in my final selections, but let's just kind of look at this for a second. So again, I still start with my inspiration photos, and I start moving things around and placing things that I think work well together. And so this is an editing process. So in this class, we talk a lot about the design process. We work from large to small. So here I'm doing the same thing. I'm grouping large to small. So I'm editing as I go. So that's a little bit about inspiration boards and the design process. You're starting to really kind of finalize and start thinking about some decisions about the direction you want the house to take. And again, don't be surprised if you find that you have more than one direction to go. Again, I could take this more traditional Ivory Coast, or I can keep a nice twist on it, a kind of a contemporary twist on it. So it's okay that you might have two boards that surface. It's just in the end you have to choose one that you're going to be presenting to your client. All right, now about PowerPoint and how to work with PowerPoint. You're going to want to start by making your page 11 by 17. And you do that by clicking on Design. And you can go under Slide Size, Custom, and you can see here I made it 17 inches wide by 11 inches high. That's the standard paper that we use in this class. Next, you're going to want to determine your background color. I stop and I pause for a second about the background color. So under background color, you're going to want to choose a background color that to me represents the wall color or the majority of the design. So that might be a white, an off-white, it could be gray, it could be beige. The only time that I use black or a strong colors is if that in fact is the background color of the majority of the project. So for example, I might choose a black background when I'm designing a bar or restaurant, club that's very dark, and so I need to put objects on there, on the board, that are going to stand out in the space. This is a really important point. Please do not make a yellow background or a red background or even a black background unless that is the majority of your wall color, what's coming on in the room. What happens is it affects the way you place your objects and select your objects, and it actually messes with your design. So again, try to choose a background color that is similar to your wall color. So maybe this is going to need to be a warm gray or a white. So format background, it's going to be a solid fill, and then you can pick your color. So maybe I just want to do like a warm off-white. Or maybe I even want to pick the color back here, if you can get a nice pick using the eyedropper. So I'm just going to keep mine white, but this is how you do it, and there it's changed to a nice soft gray. Next, how to remove background colors. So sometimes you want to layer objects on top of each other. For example, you may want to place these objects layering and you need to remove the background. To remove the background, you click on the object, then you click on the picture tool and you hit remove background. What you see in pink is going to be removed. So sometimes the automatic or the default background removal catches things that you want to keep or remove. So here you can see that it's catching some of the corners of my pillow, and I want to keep those. So I can click on the mark areas to keep, and I can click on that and it'll save it. So now when I click off of this, I have removed the background. So now I can do some layering and I don't have a white background. Like you can see here, this light still has a background. Alright, you also may want to layer things and you need to move things forward and backwards. To move things forward and backwards, you use the bring forward and bring backward. To activate that, you can see right now it's not on the top of my screen. You first have to click on the image. Then you can move that forward or backwards. So I'm going to send this black pillow to the back, and now the yellow pillow is in front of it. You can also click on the object and Control X to remove, and Control V to paste on your keyboard, and you can bring that forward and back. Once you have decided and start editing the direction that you want to go, you're going to want to save room on the bottom of the page to name your project. So I talk about naming projects. I think it's because I've done so many model homes. I've done, I don't know, 350 model homes, and sometimes I'm doing several at one time. And so I usually just name my model, like Shades of Gray or Country Craftsman or something like that, so it's just easy for me to reflect upon what I'm working on. So I just got in that habit, and here I'm calling this project Cave Creek Resident Celebrates Africa's Ivory Coast. When you're starting to arrange your images, you're going to want to make sure that you keep a nice border, which means empty space, around the perimeter. Typically, there's a little more border space at the bottom. You also want to start thinking about, how do I create that visual border? The eye follows line. So if your eye is following the edge of this image, it's going to follow that down. It's going to follow that down to here. So you can actually start aligning things. Notice when I click on the text and I move it closer to the edge, you can see a dashed line appears that indicates that I'm aligning the text with that edge. And it's just kind of nice for the eye for you to keep some of those edges. For example, if you don't have something here, your eye still will move to the next area and follow that perimeter around. So it's not necessarily that everything has to be aligned like this, but you do want to have those areas that your eye travels and follows. Next, I would like you to include your palette. So it's always nice, I think, to have your client's palette at the bottom of the page. I did these by inserting squares with softened quarters. To do that, hit Insert, Shapes, and here's that square with a softened quarter. Click on your mouse, drag, and release. When you release, you can actually play with the size. So if you want that size to be equal, you can make them both 0.75, for example, by 0.75. And now it's a nice square. To duplicate the square, you can duplicate by doing Control-C on your keyboard and Control-V on your keyboard to paste. You can use the alignment tool again manually by just pulling them apart. And you'll see that arrows will show my equal spacing at the bottom, right like that. I also have included a list of tools for PowerPoint, and you can also do this a little easier way, but this is the kind of the quickest manual way. To make these a color, you can select a color by going into Shape Fill and playing around and finding colors. You can also find colors by going to Shape Fill, More Fill Colors, and editing those. The easiest way for me to find colors is to go ahead and use the eyedropper and click on a color. Shape outline can be the same color, or you can also say no outline so that there's not a blue border around those. So again, click on the shape, Shape Fill, eyedropper, pick a color, and make the shape outline no outline. Alright, so that's the easiest way to create a color palette. This is what my final project looked like. I think it's pretty nice. We have an example of lighting, pillows and textures. I found the rope chair. You don't want to duplicate too much that's in the picture, but you can duplicate a few things. Just don't duplicate too many things. An example of concrete solid mass that I want to use, area rugs, what I think some of the cool sculptural upholstery pieces might look like, and then I went in and added a shadow to my colors. To add a shadow, click on the shape, shape effects, here's the shadows. I usually use the standard shadow, which is outer, offset, bottom right, but you could play around with those shadows. So that's kind of nice because it sets the paint off of the page a bit. So when you're all done, take a look. Do you have a nice aligned edge? Those are aligned. Some of these are aligned on the edge, yes. Just take one look before you save it. Your eye follows color, so yellow, 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 yellow. I have nice yellow going around the page. My eye follows black, 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 black. My eye follows pattern and texture, so just make sure that your eye is moving nicely around the page. Your eye also follows line, so I wouldn't want to place this chair on this side of the composition. If I place it on this side of the composition, I might want to flip it. What happens is this is a very strong angle that takes my eye off the page. And we don't want to do that. We want to keep the viewer's eye in the composition. So I have it here, and that way my eye comes down and it comes back down into the page. So we want to keep that moving around. When you're ready to save just one slide as a JPEG, go ahead and hit File, Save As, and you can save it as a PDF, which will save the entire your entire process as a PDF. You can save it as a PowerPoint again, so you can edit it and change it later. But to turn it in online, select JPEG and hit Save. And it's going to ask you this question. Do you want to export all of them? And the answer is no. I just want to export my current slide that I finished and completed. Now you've saved just one page. You can do the same for your project statement. If you brought your project statement in here, you can also save this as well. So that's the end of my quick tutorial on creating inspiration boards. This is INT 175. And notice that my colors work well together. There shouldn't be much confusion. This is what you would present to your client in the programming stage to say, hey, this is the direction. From everything I've heard from you, the interview, the research, this is the direction that I think you would like to go with your project.